I'll say it. I am basically a Crow City of Angels apologist. I think this movie has a way worse reputation than it deserves. It is not as good as the first movie, and I think it would have been really difficult for any sequel to be anywhere close to as good as that movie. It was such a just perfect confluence of Brandon Lee's career and Alex Proyas, the director of the first movie, being, his first feature. Just so much that went right with that movie. But I will say, Crow City of Angels, for all of its flaws,
I see a bird. Fuck you, you fucking fool!
had a lot going for it. And unfortunately, a lot of that didn't make it to the screen. And there's a whole story behind that. And you're here for the fan edit, but I think it's important to know why I'm even doing this fan edit.
Do you want me, baby?
The story basically goes that David Goyer, the writer of the script, who would go on to do Dark City, some of the Batman movies. I mean, his career is phenomenal. He's doing Foundation now for Apple. He wrote a script. It was very good. I've read it, and I read it quite a bit for this project. But it tries to be respectful. It does not bring Eric Draven back. It's a new character, and there's some continuation of Sarah, the young girl from the first movie.
I want to help you.
They really try to be similar in sort of tone and certainly how some of the action plays out, but try to do something a little new and different with the Crow character, which they made a lot of efforts apparently to reach out to fans and to find what's a respectful way to do a sequel to a movie that was obviously so popular, but also tragic death of Brandon Lee. Tim Pope, who had done every single music video for The Cure, among other great artists, this really acclaimed music video director, really captured, I think, the look of The Crow, what fans would expect. Just shot a really cool looking movie. And then unfortunately, the Weinstein brothers decided that it was not enough like the original Crow movie. And so in post stepped in and had it just kind of nonsensically re-edited in a lot of ways. Just scenes are placed out of order for whatever reason. And then a lot of characters had moments cut, scenes cut, particularly Sarah. She was clearly, according to the script, supposed to be a much bigger role, almost equal to Ash, the new Crow. And in the end, what you see on screen, she's in it, and maybe especially in the first third, but she really is so diminished by the end of the movie as far as what her role is.
Where am I?
All it is to say is there's a reason people don't like this movie, and it's probably because they saw the theatrical cut and aren't aware of the story behind it. Over the years, there's been a lot of discussion and desire to see a version of this movie that's closer to what David Goyer wrote and Tim Pope, intended to have audiences see. Unfortunately, there's just that footage is probably never going to be available. There's this myth of a sort of pay-per-view cut from the late 90s that somebody accidentally maybe let out a rough cut of the movie that was much longer, and nobody's ever been able to find it. I have a feeling that it's not entirely true, that it likely was just the director's cut that got played, which really is another marketing gimmick. It adds maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes of footage to the movie. Some of it is good, beneficial footage, some extra scenes that really do flesh a few things out, but it does not rearrange anything. It does not change the ending. There's nothing about it that makes it really more accurate to the original script. So, with all that said, there happens to be a 3-issue tie-in comic for this film. It follows the script very closely, There's definitely a handful of scenes missing. It's a different medium. It's a comic. There's, and especially without it being longer, it really does kind of jump erratically around. As a comic book, it's probably just okay at best, but taken as a sort of alternate visual source for the film, I really got the idea of what if you took all this live action footage, rearranged it to be closer to what the script intended, and then filled in any blanks with panels from the comic. So that's basically the inspiration for this project. And I can run down some of how this played out. I have a version that's finished and very excited to share with people. And of course, to be honest, the comic book is flawed in some ways as well. Some of the art is really cool looking. A lot of the pages are not as good as other art, but all in all, I think I've been able to put in about 40 pages into the movie. And this is really interesting challenge for me. I've never done something ambitious like this, but kind of upscaled all of these comic pages to much higher resolution so that I could basically zoom in on a panel and then use sort of keyframe animation to zip between different panels or text bubbles and things like that and sort of fill in some of this stuff that's just missing from the live action footage. And I think I've added, if you're comparing to the theatrical cut, there's probably about 10 minutes more. If it was live action footage, I'm sure it would be even longer. It's much easier to sort of read something and to see a still image. I'm not holding on these things for minutes and minutes and minutes. It's really, maybe sticking around for 20 or 30 seconds to fill in some of these gaps. But I really think it does such a good job of just adding that extra character, some of those extra scenes that were really just lost, when this was re-edited. One of the things I'm really happy about is just some of the music I was able to grab and put under these comic sequences. I really wanted to try to have a similar feel as the first movie. And like I said, it seems like that was really a goal of everyone creatively involved in this. Tim Pope, I know they'd hired the same production designer, so there's a very sort of feel of the world of The Crow. The same composer came back to do music for this. And so with that music, I really wanted to try to fill in any sort of empty spots with music that felt at home. I want to say there's almost a dozen songs that I've either taken pieces from and put in, or have entire sections of them in there. Soundgarden, Nine Inch Nails, The Cure, which is kind of important to me. Just with Tim Pope's involvement between this film and all the music videos he's directed for The Cure, and I just think it really works. Really happy with how that turned out. So hopefully people enjoy the music choices in there as well. And I know this is a little controversial, but there was a couple scenes that were entirely missing from both the live action footage and from the comic. And so what I did is one of them I recreated with a little image generation using comic panels as sort of the inspiration for that. I think it fills in a nice character moment for Ash. And so that's in there. And then I also did some voice cloning. In particular, there's a scene where the main antagonist, Judah, really goes into his whole thing with death. Why is he obsessed with death? Why does he see death coming for him? And there just wasn't anything outside of the script that allowed me to put that scene in there. And so I basically got a voice clone of him created and then I've layered it over some footage that was already there. I think it works pretty well. There was also a lot more voiceover for Sarah that was there in the script. Some of it made it to the film, and unfortunately, strangely, it conflicts with some of what was both in the script and the comic. So I used what was available that was in the film, did some voice cloning for Mia Kirshner, and then kind of filled in those portions that were either different or entirely missing. I think it adds a lot having that voiceover. It really makes Sarah's character more prominent. There's multiple other panels that fill in some other character information or just add her into some scenes and some real plot crucial moments that, didn't make it to that edit. So overall, I'll be honest, I don't think this movie was ever going to be a classic in the same way the original movie was going to be. But I think this is so much better. You can really tell there was a story there that people created and cared about that tried to do something a little new. This one in particular has an opening and a closing that's not there in the fan edit from 20 years ago. I think they made a choice to leave it out, and I can sort of understand why. It adds a whole new sort of layer to things. I'm including it because the comic panels are there.
And so they wait, trapped between our world and the next.
Kind of major spoiler for anyone to jump out now, but it actually ends in the script in such a cool way. And I'm just going to sort of go through it right now because the comic doesn't capture it entirely. Ash is, in the same ways in the movie, riding through this dead city on his motorcycle. But what we see at the same time is Sarah is now in the afterlife and she's galloping along on a horse, and she is appearing now as sort of a undead crow guide, almost like a crow warrior in the afterlife. And her voiceover is talking about if you really love somebody, you'll find them, you'll be together. And the script description is talking about cutting between, Ash is driving his motorcycle, Sarah's riding on her horse, and they're both just in sync, searching for each other, waiting for that moment to be together again. But it's just constantly cutting back and forth between them. And I just thought that visual was so cool. I think it could have been an amazing addition to the movie. And who knows, maybe someday there'll be a version 2 of this edit where, again, controversial as it is, yeah, I do think that's something that AI could help with, some video generation, and you could have that moment. And while I don't think AI is going to be something that's good for the art community or for filmmaking, I think there's going to be some real downsides to this. I think for the fan edit community, I think it can be so useful because there's things like this, film preservation, or bringing back lost footage, lost things like these. I think it's really valuable, and I hope people can understand why I might have used it for this project. Ultimately, I hope people enjoy this edit. It was a lot of fun to create. Real big challenge for me. I haven't done something like this with sort of still image and creating that sort of keyframe animation and a lot of adding in music and trying to make things match up. But really happy with what's there right now. Go watch the movie. Would love to hear comments and follow up if people are enjoying it or if there's things people think are still missing.